Hello, I'm Russell Sandberg and I'm Professor of Law at Cardiff University. Now, last year, we held at Cardiff a student-run mooting competition in order to raise funds for the National Community Law Project, a legal advice organisation set up by some of our graduates. And as part of that event, we had a lecturer versus barrister moot. And to my shock and to considerable dismay, the lecturers won, and I was one of the winning team. And so as reigning champion, one of the reigning champions, I've been asked to pass on my mooting tips to you. And in this short video, a lot of what I'm going to say applies to mooting generally, but some of it will apply solely to those who are taking part in this year's moot fundraiser for the National Community Law Project. So first and foremost, to them, congratulations on taking part and well done helping to raise money for the project. So what struck me last year when I was given the moot problem was how similar it looked to the type of problem question you'll get as part of assessments. The difference, I suppose, in terms of the problem was that it often dealt with as well how the lower courts had dealt with the problem. So it's basically a problem question and then some details about how the lower courts had dealt with it. And in many respects, the same skills you apply to a problem question, you apply also to this. You're looking at the facts, trying to pull out the relevant details, trying to see where the grey areas are. But whereas in a problem question for your assessments, you're trying to show both sides of the issue, and you're primarily trying to show off your legal knowledge to the examiner, here in a moot problem, it's slightly different. Because in a moot problem, you are taking one side. You are taking one side, and your role is to persuade the judge or judges that your side is the side to be taken. So it's an oral presentation whereby in teams, you are trying to persuade the court that your side should be followed and that you should win the moot. So there's two teams, there's the appellate team and the respondent team, and then there's two members of that team. And typically in the moot problem, there are two grounds, there are two major issues which are being appealed. And what you need to do in your teams, so in your teams of two, is to work out which of you is going to deal with ground one and be the lead or senior counsel, and which of you is going to deal with ground two and be the junior counsel. And then, once you've done that, once you've worked out what you're arguing, you need to be looking at the problem through the lens of that particular ground. Break the ground down. Try and work out what are the main steps you would need to prove in order to prove your ground. You've been told to look at it from both ways. So because it's not been announced yet whether you're going to be the appellant or the respondent. And also if you get through to the semi-final or indeed the final, you'll be using the same moot. So it may well be that you're, say, the appellant in moot one, but then you are the respondent in the same scenario in the final. So it's important that once you've got your ground, you're able to look at it from both ways. But once you know which argument you're going for, whether you're the appellant or the respondent, then that too will shape the way in which you look at it. And the way in which I dealt with it last year was, we split up and decided who was dealing with which ground. And then we went away and we really looked at the problem question, as I'm saying, through the lens of that ground, and came up with the step-by-step of what would need to be proved in order to prove the ground our way. And that was quite scripted in terms of a bullet point of information and making the arguments and putting in the relevant authorities, the relevant cases. Now, if you refer to a case, make sure you know what the case is about and have a summary of the case with you in case the judge asks for more information about the case. But yes, I would have this document, which would be a bullet point document of my grounds, and include the headings. That's the key thing here. So include the headings in terms of the first ground is, the first part of this ground is, first argument is, the second argument is, the third argument is. I say etc. We probably won't need more than 3 arguments. It obviously depends on the moot problem. So have that laid out. And unlike a problem question, you can also bring in non-legal arguments here in terms of what's the sort of the personal response to this? What's the moral response to this? Would it be extraordinary? Would it be unreasonable? Would it be unconscionable in order for this appeal to succeed or not to succeed, depending on what side you're arguing? So feel free to also look at it in a more human way and bring those arguments in. So in terms of preparation, the first thing to do is to work out what ground you're focusing on, do your research on that ground, develop this plan of what you're going to say in terms of these are the main arguments. And it might be that, you know, there's 2 possibilities in terms of if you don't follow this argument, you could follow that argument. So feel free to do that. And make sure you collect your authorities. You do not need to have a bundle to give to the judge for this mooting problem, but I do think it's useful for you to have that material in front of you. And that's the main preparation I would do, is I would have the arguments laid out there for me in terms of my particular ground. So in terms of the actual moot itself, as I've been saying, there are 4 people mooting at a time. So on the one side, you've got the senior counsel to the appellant and the junior counsel to the appellant. And on the other side, you've got the senior counsel to respondent and the junior counsel to respondent. And then there will be, of course, judges. And it's important to get the vocabulary right. So the actual moot, remember, you're trying to persuade. And so you can do that in ways which you probably wouldn't do if you write it up as a problem question assessment. But it's also important that you show evidence of courtroom etiquette, and you behave as if you're in the Supreme Court, as if you're in the Court of Appeal. So the key things here is that you refer to the judges as my lords or my ladies, and you refer to the court as the court. So you speak in terms of may it please the court, or my lady, my lord, I submit that. And as I say, go through your headings as well as your argument and make sure you do it in a way that's persuasive. But that often means that you need to be quite sort of slow with it in order for the judges to follow. In terms of starting the moot, the person who goes first is the senior counsel for the appellant, and they need to introduce all of the counsel. So the way in which you would start is you would say my lord or my ladies or my lords, depending on who the judges are. I am, and then give your name, say that you're senior counsel for the appellant, then introduce your partner. So say this is whether that happens to be, and they are junior counsel for the appellant. Then name who the appellant is based on the problem questions, who is the person you're representing, and then say my learned friends opposite are senior counsel and junior counsel respondents, mention their names, and also mention who they are appearing for. It's then good practice to ask, would your lordships or would your ladyships like a brief summary of the facts of the case. And if they say yes, that's when you can summarize, or indeed just read out the moot problem question. And at that point, you say, if your lordship, your ladyship, has no further questions on the facts of the case, I shall proceed rather to my submissions. And this is where you summarize in terms of saying, may it please the court, I will be making 3 main arguments today. My first argument is and off you go, and then you go. My second argument is and off you go. And as I say, it's very useful, I found, to have these arguments laid out in bullet form, so you're not quite reading, although if you're more comfortable reading, that's also fine, particularly at this stage, it has to be said. But it gives you that flexibility. And you can also play devil's advocate with the views of the other side as you go through as well. So in addition to proving your case, you can always add a couple of comments which dismiss the other side. It would be extraordinary to come to the opposite conclusion, my lord, because if we did, and as I said before, look at these moot problems from a human level as well. The other thing is that judges will ask questions. This is known as judicial intervention. And that can happen at any time during your moot. So the lead counsel will go first, then the junior counsel will go, and then the other side, the lead counsel will go, and then the junior counsel will go. But in any of those, possibly all of those speeches, you might get interrupted by the judge asking a question. And if and when a judge asks a question, there's nothing wrong with taking a few seconds to pause. What will seem like a lifetime to you in terms of pause will be very, very little to them. And you can answer that politely by saying, I thank your lordship for raising this point. May I have a moment to consult my notes? If you don't know the answer, you can just say that. My lordship, I'm unaware of the answer to the question you've asked and would like to proceed with my submissions. If you can answer, obviously do answer it, and then try and move back to your script, back to your layout of bullets. So you can even say, I trust my lord that answers your question. And unless they interrupt and say, no, it doesn't, then just carry on. And that's where this list of bullets is going to be useful, because if they interrupt you on point 3, you can then look down and go, yes, that's where I was. I will re-summarize point 3 and then move on to point 4. When you're introducing cases, you can ask the judge or judges whether they want a summary of the facts or not. And I know in this moot you've been given 10 minutes per mooter. It's up to 10 minutes. You don't have to use every single part of that 10 minutes. So if you're writing your moot and you think, oh, good grief, this is quite short, this will only take me 5 minutes. One, things do take much longer when you are delivering them orally, particularly if you do so in a slightly slower way than you would normally talk. And 2, that doesn't include, of course, time for judicial intervention. That doesn't include, of course, any discussion of the facts, which judges might ask for, that kind of thing. So I wouldn't prepare a full 10 minutes, and I wouldn't be scared by the fact that it is 10 minutes. In fact, I wouldn't be scared generally. If this is your first time mooting, just remember in order to get your best performance, you've got to have done your first performance. Your first essay is never going to be as good as your most recent essay. And so your first moot isn't going to be as good and isn't going to be as polished as you will become. And everyone has to start somewhere. And this is a great opportunity in terms of starting to moot, because you've got 2 rounds back to back. There's no eliminations in terms of, it's not the case that only the winning team go forward. It's a point-based system. So that means that there is a score sheet, and the things that we're looking for, the things that judges are looking for, are laid out on the score sheet. You've been emailed a copy of the score sheet to have a look at that. And what will happen is the highest scorers overall will go into the semi-finals. Everyone will moot in round 1. Everyone will moot in round 2, then we'll top up the scores, and the highest scorers go through to the semi-final, and then the highest scores of the semi-final go through to the final. So it's not one of those mooting competitions where you can get knocked out in round 1. And it's not, obviously the judges at the end will come to their conclusion as to which team has won, but it won't be the case that it's sort of a reality TV type eviction whereby the losing team go out of the competition. So it's a nice, friendly, relaxed opportunity to develop your mooting skills, while at the same time raising funds for a very good cause. So I congratulate you once again in taking part in this fantastic opportunity, and I wish you all the best of luck. Good luck.